Hey, welcome back to the Wellness Path Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Vic Manzo, and I'm excited to have you here on with us as we're going to be diving deep into gut health. Now, it's only be a one part of many part series because 15, 20 minutes of a podcast episode can't really dive that deep into it. So I'm going to give you at least a little something that you can practice in your life. And I'll even put in some links in the show notes of what I recommend the patients that I enjoy when it comes to utilizing things to help my gut health and whatnot. So before you do further ado, check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, or on TikTok and YouTube. Subscribe, like, so you don't miss an episode like this. Subscribe to our blog. We do a blog twice a month, various different topics. Chime into that, and so you don't ever miss another one on there. So, and we're going to be coming out with a cool ebook for kiddos, for pregnancy, and just for longevity. It's going to be a free ebook that you can get information on what to do, the aspects of those things, how to improve children's health, why is it critical important for chiropractic, pregnancy, why is that critically important, and then also for longevity in adults. What is longevity? How do we optimize our health, and what are things that we can do? So stay tuned for that, as we'll be sharing those things as they come out. That being said, today's topic, again, is all about gut health, the microbiome. I want to break that down really quick. What is this thing called the microbiome? And really what we know now about the body is there is about 10 times more bacteria and viruses, parasites and funguses and yeasts on our body in total, in our body, than there is cells. I mean, you have I'm going blank. There's 750 trillion. There's over 100 trillion just bacterial cells in our gut. So this microbiome is crucial for a ton of different things. And the research started coming around really big. I started seeing it in this mid 1990s. It was, but when I was in the late 2000s, talking about how microbiome and probiotics and the different strains that there are in that and what it can counter. So like if you're depressed, here's what we can see. Like there's a certain probiotic that's missing in the gut for those who have celiac. They found a correlation to it. And so there's many different things that when it comes to the microbiome to do that. So I'm going to be sharing the basics of it all. I'm going to share into you what I recommend, what I do, and how you can help it. All right. So the microbiome is, like I said, there's about 750 trillion in total. 100 of that is found in the gut. You have, I think, another 100 on the skin, and it's made up all throughout the body. And so this is vital for every facet. The newest research I've been seeing is we even know there's a correlation to specific probiotics or in your gut that relate to joint health, disc health, every facet. They're finding these new connections. So a lot of people, if you're familiar with the microbiome or the gut-brain axis, people are familiar with that. Well, we're also finding there's other gut to joint axis, gut to disc axis, and so much more. So if you have like a disc issue, we're starting to see that there may be a microbiome issue too first that's maybe affecting that. It's changing how we look at things a little bit. And as a chiropractor, I kind of look at things and go, that may be true, nervous system first, and then that. We'll talk about that later. But so what are some stuff that, when we look at our gut, what really disrupts our gut and what's causing huge issues in children's health when it comes to gut health? I cannot emphasize enough that GMO or glyphosate type Roundup that is sprayed on non-organic foods. This causes a massive disruptor into your gut. It's like an atomic bomb just coming in and destroying things. And so the rule I always tell patients is that if you are spraying something on a plant that kills certain things, there is a chance that also kills certain things in you. It's pretty much guaranteed. And so this is why I'm a big fan of organic. Now, there are some things out there called the Clean 15, the Dirty Dozen. If you're on a budget, organic has gotten better in pricing, but if you're on a budget, I highly, highly emphasize that the Dirty Dozen you want to make sure are 100% organic. And I always tell people spend the money on the fruit because most of the time those are going to be in the Dirty Dozen. Like strawberries, you can't wash that stuff off. It gets absorbed in. So if you have non-organic strawberries, you are consuming pesticides. Citrus fruits can do that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I know avocado is one of the Clean 15s. It's a thick skin, so there's no pesticide residue. So this is where you want to avoid glyphosate, and pesticides. It is a gut disruptor. And so it causes a lot of havoc on kiddos' health. And there's a lot of research to show that are supporting now that like people blame gluten to be such horrible for us and we shouldn't consume it. I am 100% against that. The research, I read that type of research. I get it. But the problem with the research is just like the vegan movement, where they look at meat and they say how it causes cancer and heart disease. But the problem is if you look at the research, they only talk about commercial raised beef, cows, in other words. They don't talk about organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised. And the reason why they don't is because it'll go against everything they're saying. That's just how science is today. We only do research on what we know can support our agenda rather than sharing the science in all aspects to look at what's good and bad. And when I went down the whole grass-fed route and I was learning all that back 20-something years ago almost, I started to look and say, well, what about gluten? What if we have gluten wrong? Because I went gluten-free at 19 years old. I was like, okay, I got to get rid of gluten. It destroys the gut. It creates brain issues and all this other stuff. And I've read the books and I was doing this research and the studies and I got all into that. I was like, gluten is bad. We got to avoid it. But my Italian heritage came out and was like, hold on. I started saying, wait a minute, my whole family was raised on carbs. I was raised on carbs. And I have gut issues. I had tons of candida and gut issues when I first started my healing journey. But I started looking at Italians, and then the movie comes out, the Blue Zones, and they're looking at Sardinians, and all they eat is carbs. I mean, it's primarily carbs. And I'm like, they're living to over about 100 plus. So how can carbs be so bad? What everyone's saying. And then it dawned on me. There's two things that I really believe. It's going to be and this is not about carbs in general and breads and wheats and stuff, but we grow our wheat differently in America. And number two, we spray glyphosate on everything. There are other issues with our flour, just as like we don't use, we brominate everything. We don't use iodine in there. So that causes issues and so much more. But that's why I don't believe from all the research I've been seeing, it's not gluten, it's glyphosate that actually messes up the gut. So we want to avoid it at all costs when it comes to that. Pesticides fall below that, okay? The second thing is you want to make sure, if you're on an antibiotic, if you've ever had to take an antibiotic, it destroys a lot of the good and the bad. And so then what happens is when you recultivate, unless you have a very clean diet, you take probiotics and you're taking prebiotics and all these other things, you are just going to regrow bad bacteria. So it makes it even worse on your gut. And that's why kids who have, when I'm working with infants kids, toddlers, or even 5, 7, 9-year-olds, I even pediatrics in general, I want to see their history of how many antibiotics have they taken. And I also look and see what they've been eating. So it tells me, what am I working with? Because a gut that's not healthy, a microbiome that's not healthy, actually fires up the nervous system and stresses it more. There's a gut-brain axis, so it stresses the brain more, which is going to cause more imbalances in the nervous system, turn stress on more, and this creates a whole cascade effect of things. So we look at all these different angles to see how we can help and so much more with that. So you got that aspect. So antibiotics destroys all these different things. That's why, like when I'm working with patients, there are some things, if I know they know they're gonna have to go on it for a short period of time, there are things you can take that minimize the negative effects, and then you want to double up on your probiotics for 3 months and take a good prebiotic. And I'm going to talk about what those are, which ones I recommend, and all that good stuff. And I'll have some for you in the show notes that you can go to. So those are the things that you have with that that are the two biggest that I see disruptors when it comes to our overall gut health. There is so many more that I can go down. There's so many different toxicities and all these other variances that can play a role. Some of us just don't have good, healthy, what we call tight junctions, which is another conversation to have, what we call leaky gut. And this happens due to chronic stress being turned on in the nervous system. You're on chronic stress, the food you eat and all this. You have these cells in the intestines that they should be like really close and binded, so nothing can come through. But when you have leaky gut, what happens is cells are, if you look at the video I'm showing by hands, it separates a little bit. And so now proteins can get in there. And a lot of research supports that. When you keep having body immune system has overexposure to a lot of proteins, you can end up having potentially autoimmune issues because then the body creates antibodies to those proteins because they shouldn't be in the blood. And so there are things you can do to correct that and to help strengthen the gut and help it heal so then it works more efficiently in everything that it does. So that's 3 things I want to get into. And I want to tailor now to, and again, there's so many other things. There's enzymes, right? How much good enzymes are we taking? or your body have. When you're more stressed, you have less enzymes because it needs it for other parts of the body. And so digesting food doesn't break down as well as it should. So you don't absorb nutrients as well. Another thing about digestion and the microbiome is that stomach acid plays a role too. So I'm getting a little bit more into digestive health with this, but I wanted to just share some things that I want you to see that it's a bigger picture than what you're thinking. It's not just one simple thing. Take probiotics and I'm good. Because when I work with patients and they'll be like, hey, oh, I'm good on probiotics. I do yogurt and I do kimchi and I do this and that's great. And I'm like, that's awesome. Well, those are all supplementals. Like, it's great to have a very well-versed diet in that. I'm a big fan of it. But based on my research and my experiences and professionally and personally, as much as I eat those things, I make my own yogurt and I make it like hyper strong with heirloom Viking probiotics. And yet still I do that. And that's just one type. And then I do, maybe sometimes I'll do like sauerkraut and I do sourdough bread and I try to figure out what are things I can blend in, kombuchas and so forth to get as much fermented foods as possible. Although I don't like the taste of them that much sometimes. But anywho, supplements help with that. So let's get into really quick then. I want to talk a little bit about what supplements, why you want to focus on one versus the other, because a lot of times I'll have patients say, hey, I take a probiotic, or little Johnny here takes a probiotic. I'm like, great, what kind of probiotic? Is it live or is it dead? And they look at me and go, I don't know. I said, well, do you have to refrigerate this? So we have to refrigerate it. Okay, so the life of that decreases over time. How it got shipped to you and where it was in the before is also going to play a role in that. Or sometimes they say, no, I don't have to. It's just a normal probiotic. So it's a dead probiotic. And there's some theory that believe that this thing that's dead, when you put it in your body, is going to come back alive. That doesn't work either. And I said, how do you know that it survives the stomach acid? Because normal probiotics are going to die off in the acid. Some will. Not all of them do, but some do. And so I was like, so unless you don't have to know that, then you may be spending money on something that's not good quality. And I've had patients that have done GI map testing and so forth, and they saw their imbalance in their gut, and then we put them on a 6-month process, had them go back and retest, and they'll see a huge change. And they're like, I don't get it. I take prebiotics, probiotics, I do all these things, and yet I'm getting all this. So what you want to focus on is this. Okay. And like I said, I'm going to share with you what I take and what I recommend to patients. But what you want to focus on is something called soil-based organisms. Okay. Now, soil-based means they're spores. Spores have a protective layer on them. So when you take it, the acid of your stomach doesn't break it down. So what it'll do is it'll go into the colon and adhere to it. You get 100% of what you're taking. The beautiful thing about soil-based organisms, you don't have to refrigerate them. So now you know the potency of what you're getting. They're not dying off. They're spores. And so that's the beauty of SBO. In my office, when I first got exposed to this 14 years ago, 13 years ago, I was blown away by this because I'm like, wow, I know now when I'm taking something, it's going to get into my gut properly. So I knew that. But then I got exposed to prebiotics. It wasn't that much longer after, where this is where kombucha has it. Certain fermented foods, they have prebiotics. There's other foods you can consume that have prebiotics. Prebiotics is like a sugar that feeds the good bacteria, but it also feeds the bad bacteria too. I didn't know that part till later, because I was all excited about prebiotics and consuming that now, because now I'm feeding it what I have. I'm building my army on the inside, and then I'm taking soil-based organisms. I thought I was doing everything right. And then I find out, no, prebiotics feed both the good and bad. So I'm like, great. How do I just feed the good guys? There is a prebiotic for it. It's called XOS, xylo-oligosaccharides. That is based on the research, shows that it's the only one that feeds the good right now, at least that I know of. I've found this out about a few years back, but it's the only one that feeds the good bacteria. So when I'm working with building up someone's gut health, there's a lot of other things we do, but the main thing is we look at what prebiotic are you taking, what SBO are you taking an SBO probiotic. That's the goal there. And then the other ones, now they're starting to come out with because they're finding out postbiotics are great too. And that helps the gut and other things with that. So there's so many things you can do with it, but these are things that will help. These are the basics. We're not even talking about, what is it called? I'm going blank. Bacteriides. Anyhow, they're viruses that will kill off bad bacteria. And we have some in our body too. But sometimes when I'm working with someone who has like SIBO, other gut digestive issues that are pretty severe, I recommend that for a little bit because I know that it's going to go kill off the bad, and then we can help give the good a chance to rebuild itself up. But it takes time. Gut health takes time, 6 months, 6 months, a year. Depends on what you have going on and how severe it is. So when we're looking at that, you want to make sure that you're taking a probiotic is soil based. That's how you'll know. And there's some companies that are better than others, but you want to know that you're taking something that's going to get into the gut and passes the acid of the stomach. The second thing you want to make sure of is you want to know that the second thing you want to know is you want to make sure you're getting a prebiotic with it. So this is where it's going to help to feed the good and the bad. I'm sorry, the good only, the XOS one. And so what I usually recommend, it's great to have it on an empty stomach. Take your probiotics, prebiotic. You can do it at night. Some people recommend there. Personally, to me, I don't have a preference. I've done them both ways. But I had my gut tested years and years ago, and it was very imbalanced. And I was shocked because I ate organic, I ate clean, I did all the good stuff. And I was like, I don't get it. I take probiotics. This is how I started looking into other things. And I was like, it doesn't make sense, but you know what, fine. Maybe it's just supplements don't work. I don't know. I was taking a ton of good probiotics and prebiotics and all this stuff. And so long story short, I understood what a soil-based organism was. I went and took them, did it for 1 year. Went to get my gut retested. I had a 92% balanced gut. Right? I've seen this with many patients before. They're like, I'm on a probiotic, doc. I'm good. And I'm always like, what's the brand? I want to know because there's supplements I'm going to recommend to you, and there's different things that will help you in that process when it comes to that. So that's the kind of thing that I would say when you're looking at it, you want to make sure it's soil-based. I got great brands there, pharmaceutical grade. They get the results. I've been taking this brand now for 5 years. I'm always looking for new supplements that may be better, or new tech that comes out, or new research that comes out, maybe a better way. I'm very happy with them. Patients of mine that I work with are very happy with them. You could take them even for your youngsters. If your child's, under the age, if you got a young one who's still breastfeeding or formula feeding or both, prebiotics is what I usually recommend. You want to just give them a good prebiotic, let it build up in the gut, and let it do it naturally. If you're doing breast milk, you have your probiotics in there and all that good stuff. It's still where they can handle, there's other things that they can take that are soil-based. And we get creative with it, meeting where is the family at, and what's going on, and all that, because then I have to look and say, well, what product is going to be the best? I mean, if they're old enough to take pills, great, here you go. If not, you want to do powder. There's other things we have to look at. We get it in a liquid. There's other things there's so many different variables to it now. How do we get it in their system? There's gummies that are SBO based. There's a lot of different products out there now, and it's just getting better and better as we go. So it's just looking at what can work best for the family to serve them and what they need. So that's what I got for you. Eat organic. Okay. I'll have a link in the show notes so you guys don't have to go look for it. The clean 15, the dirty dozen. I'll just put it in there for you so you know what you have to buy organic versus not. I'll have the link to the supplements so you can have, if you're interested, you can check them out. And we will, and then, enjoy some good sourdough bread. It's good for the gut. It's funny how people have gluten sensitivity. They can go have sourdough bread, be perfectly fine. I always find that interesting. So there's an aspect to it. Obviously, if you have celiac, you got to avoid that. But it's looking at those things. And so any way I can help in any way, shape, or form, please let me know. Wherever you're listening to this, do us a favor. Like, share, subscribe. Share a review, though. It helps us get this out there and really help us to expand into the Knoxville area. We are hoping by summer, our goal is to start interviewing more people, professionals, practitioners, and of alike, to who can chime anything on the avenue of health, and we're going to be interviewing. So stay tuned for that. So you want to make sure you subscribe. We're going to be doing a lot of big things this year. I want to appreciate you for your time. And until next time, keep rocking and rolling.